All right, welcome to another episode of The Catholic Couple, having fun with faith, family, and friends. I'm your co-host, Bobby Fredrickson. With me, as always, my beautiful wife,
Katie Fredrickson.
I'm the convert Catholic, and she's
the cradle Catholic.
And here we are on a brand new episode. We will be releasing these every Monday, so we do appreciate you. If you're not already subscribing on YouTube, make sure you hit that button down there so that you'll get these weekly episodes and all the shorts that we put out, and also just because it would be nice of you. So thank you. Well, Katie had a great idea for an episode because she is in the middle of her
middle just started.
Just
First
started
week down.
I guess when you say the middle, sometimes people just mean like you started it, but not technically the middle.
Middle means you're in the middle.
Yeah, I know. But when I say like I'm in the middle of a book, I don't necessarily mean I'm like at page 200 out of 400. I mean like I'm in it somewhere.
Okay.
You know what I mean? You're
so anyway, so
you're in the start of this new program.
It's not new. So
and
this
it's not new. No. It's an old practice.
This is an issue. Okay. So we all know what Exodus 90 is. I think that's gained a lot more popularity.
Who's everybody?
I think the Catholic world, a lot of the Catholic world knows what Exodus 90 is. It's 90 days of, well, you were almost did it. You almost did it and you chickened out. Go ahead and explain what Exodus 90 is first.
This episode's starting off great so far. Well, Exodus 90, obviously Exodus is from the book of the Bible. The Exodus is leaving from sin into the promised land. Mm-hmm. So Exodus 90 would be the 90 days. And it's a program for men that is dedicated to getting closer to Jesus through mortifications, asceticism, denying ourselves to get rid of a lot of the worldly comforts, right, so that we are stripped down so that we can, focus on the things that are most important, which is our relationship with God, our eternity, our soul, things like that. So
there is an answer to that. There's a women's version. There's a few women's versions and other versions of this too. But the one that I've been doing this is my 4th year, is called Magnify 90. And it's the same premise. And the what's sprouted my thoughts for this episode is that I'm in week 1, and another coworker is also doing Exodus 90, and another staff member made this comment, shout out to her because she does listen to this, but I'm not going to say her name. But she said, oh my gosh, what are you guys trying to prove? And it made me reflect and think, well, yeah, that's not the point of this. It's not about proving yourself that you could do something. It's not about proving to God that you're worthy of, it's not. So I think I thought it was a really good episode to talk. Why do we do these mortifications? Are we trying to prove something to ourselves and others? Are we trying to prove something to God? What's the point? Why do these things? Like, what is the point of them? Is there a benefit in the long run to them? And what is that benefit? What's the point? And I think that we're just so inundated. Again, we're so far removed in our culture into so much materialism and do what makes you happyism, and everything is about luxury, comfort, and the easier way, right? I think it's starting to become, I think it is becoming to our detriment, So I think this is a good episode to kind of unpack, why do we do these mortifications, these things, and what's the point? How do we do them? What are they? So just kind of, we're going to take it into, what are they? Why do them? And what benefits come from them, if any?
Well, let's just start with definitions. That's probably the best way to start. So a mortification is a voluntary self-denial or sacrifice to strengthen the soul against sin and to grow in virtue. And asceticism is just the practice of that. It's a lifestyle of self-discipline and simplicity to deepen the relationship with God.
I think that you nailed it when you said the very beginning, that stripping away of these things we think we need, things we think we need to get through A, B, and C, or things that we think we need in order to survive something. That at the end of the day, these mortifications and these practices teach us that in the end, it's really just about us and God. and all these other things are distractions, or actually these things enslave us. You wouldn't think that, like, you would think that giving up something and not being able to do something is against your freedom, but it's actually the biggest flex on freedom, because it's showing that nothing has its power over me. Nothing. I can do without that thing, whatever it is, because it doesn't have its power over me, right? Like, it's an ultimate flex in the column for freedom, not against it.
We've said that many times on here. Like Jocko says, discipline equals freedom. It's like you are free from things so you could be free for God. You could be for whatever it is that you're trying to do.
And I know I've said this on the show too before. There's a Matthew Kelly book. I think it's the Life is Messy book, where he talks about what kind of, like, what enslaves you. Like, there's what kind of comfort are you seeking? And you have to really discern every time you're looking at a specific comfort. Is this a comfort that serves me, or is this a comfort that enslaves me?
Well, it's just funny too, because we don't realize, because we take so many things for granted. Like I work outside for work, but last week it was like very cold, and which is okay, but we're dressed for it. I got thick socks. I got long, I got like 3 different kinds of long underwear that I use depending on the temperature. Like, I got a jacket on, I got gloves, I got hats, I got stuff for my face, I got all this stuff. And still some guys are complaining at work that it's too cold outside. I'm like, well, that's our job. We need to go outside. Yeah. And then I watched this new series on Netflix called American Primeval, which is a true story. It's kind of gory, but if you like history.
With the Mormons?
Yeah, it's about this massacre of the Mormons perpetrated on other Mormons and other settlers in 1857. And it's a 6-part series, but it's filmed out it's not like filmed on a studio. It's filmed literally like in the mountains, and it's in the winter. It's like, and watching these, people who are traveling, going from like Wyoming, Missouri, all the way to Utah. And it's like, they don't, they couldn't have a fire a lot of times because people could see the smoke, and it's just all these kind of comforts. And it's like, we couldn't make it for 2 days.
Yeah, but you know what, though? Someone would argue, well, we don't have to. So if we have these modern conveniences that have been given to us, why should we try to live like that's what I was trying to get.
Well, that's what I was trying to get to, is that because we never know. We need to be prepared. Obviously, you don't. If you had to survive, you could, but that's the part of being voluntarily doing this stuff, because we have so much comforts that we weren't like hopefully soon to be saint, but Pope Benedict XVI would say is that you're not made for comfort. You're made for greatness.
And there's growth in the discomfort.
But we'll settle for comfort because it's easy. It's like a warm bath and to sit down. Yeah, I'd rather sit down.
And that's the part of Exodus 90 that I don't have to do, is
the cold
showers. Magnify 90 doesn't have you do that.
Well,
so anyway, that's a side note.
In my defense, I'm not doing Exodus 90, but we are doing a Lenten challenge that Khalil and I are actually working on putting something together to help.
For you, a good 40 days worth of something. That sounds no. See, this is why we're not supposed to.
We're not supposed to be challenging and bragging about how great we are in our mortifications.
That's why we're not proving to anybody. This is the point. It was a joke. Everybody.
Okay. Well, good.
Calm down.
Glad that you're joking about it. But in my defense, again, I did do the 75 hard.
You did. But you're not supposed to let everybody know that, right? Or no, that 75 hard is not religious.
It's not religious, but I made it religious. But the point is, though, I did grow so much by denying myself and putting this strict things.
Seeing what you're capable of.
Yeah, but this is going back to the Bible and what Jesus teaches about this. I mean, what does he say in Matthew 16? He says, if anyone would want to come after me, if you want to come after Jesus, this is what you got to do. Deny yourself. Take up your cross. Follow me. It's very specific.
Yeah.
Deny yourself. So deny yourself of what? Of a lot of comforts and a lot of loving.
I think it's denying yourself of anything that separates you from God, and so many things that I wish I had brought my Magnify.
Sacrifice by definition is being uncomfortable. And if it's not, is it a sacrifice?
So I wish I had the book with me. I should have brought it down. She was just, it was what I read today was just talking about that God gives us, and that's kind of another reason why I wanted to do this episode, because it really did make total sense. She says, God gives us these good, true, and beautiful things in life. God created beauty and created us to have, a sense of humor and have fun, right? And have comforts and luxuries and fun with, like in like downtime. Like it's not all just work and sacrifice and hardship, right? It's all those things, but he never intended those things to become idols, or those things to make us be complacent, or those things to make to make us become less than what we're called to be. It's never supposed to. So that's the point of this. It's, again, I made the comment earlier, to show yourself what you're capable of. That even too isn't why we do mortifications. It's to ultimately, our purpose in life is to get to heaven. It's to become a saint. What is heaven? Heaven is, us existing within the Trinitarian love of God, right? We're in God's presence, in God's gaze. So,
and if anything else needs to be added, yes.
If anything else needs to be added for us to have that joy, that's not
heaven.
it. That's
if
not the point.
If you need X in heaven, then that's not the point.
Yeah, even people in your life, and then within this context, so that's one part of it, that these luxuries in life, these beautiful things in life, these good things in life, they're not bad, but they can never take the place of God, and they can never take the place to where we or to make us so complacent that we don't have a yearning to be better, to be good, to be to chase after. It should never make us complacent and have apathy towards what we're being called to do. And
those things should never be at the first.
Right.
And that's part of also, not that these things are good or they're bad. It's just, it matters where they're at in our lives. What is first? Because if we put anything above God, whether that's money, a job, my physical, abilities, my physique, any of those kinds of things, if that comes most important, and then those become idols. That's literally a definition of an idol. And I think what this does is it helps us take those things and make sure they're down
in priority. Show us priority. And it is also a way. It's an exercise. It's an exercise. Why do you exercise? Why do you you work out, right? Like when you increase a weight, and what you're doing is you're stripping down those muscles with filling them with blood so that they can grow back stronger. It's not proving anything. It's strengthening
it's more than that.
It's strengthening. God gives us free will. It's strengthening our will. It's strengthening our willpower in order to
gets stronger.
Him glory and to do good things for Him, working through us.
But that literally is how muscles work.
Right.
And spiritual muscles are the same. For a muscle to grow, you have to put a larger demand on it. And because if you just say you lifted a 10-pound dumbbell over and over and over again, it's your body's not going to get stronger or bigger because you're not forcing it to. You have to put a bigger load on it. You have to stress it more. You got to go up eventually to a 15 where you do it 8 reps. And then once you get the reps back up, then you go up to a 20, and you keep putting a demand. So you're forcing the muscle to grow. And our spiritual life's the same way, is that it's really easy, like entropy, just to shrink down and just go through the motions. And so we need that's why the Catholic faith is so genius, is that it has these liturgical seasons where it's time to fast and a time to feast. Right. And it's God's plan that there's times for us to fast. And this 90 days is just leading up into Lent. So it's a super Lent.
It's a super Lent. It's 50 days added on to 40 days of Lent. And why do that? What are you trying to prove? What, you can't just do the 40? But it's about, if we just are in that complacency of doing those things I'm probably going to do a little bit extra during Lent, but it's 90 days is 3 months, right? It's a little bit longer. It allows, you'd be surprised how fast 40 days does go by, right? And so to be able to have that full 90, to have a reset, to strip away from all these things that could separate, but you're not just doing that. You're building habits and building patterns.
Yeah, you're not just taking away, you're also adding on.
So for example,
so explain for everybody, like exactly what.
So for an example,
what does it look like in a week for Mag 90? Like what are some things we keep hearing, like we're getting rid of stuff, but it's not just about that. It's so you're creating space for God though too.
Not just God, others. So like, again, when you're stripping away and you really are only looking at what God is wanting you to do. If I'm not on social media, it frees me up to reach out to that friend in a phone call, which is what social media distracts us from doing. So when I strip myself away from social media and being on the fakeness of relationships, it frees me up to have a real and true relationship with a friend that maybe I haven't talked to in a while. So I would connect with that person. It has you offer up a mortification every day for a different person, and in prayer, when that person comes to your heart, you're supposed to reach out to them. So it's about stripping us away from the things that distract us, both from God and others. So it's more than just that. That's one part of it. It's not about proving something. It's about stripping away from the things that
it's not about
don't
proving, it's
matter.
about pruning.
Yeah, I like that. It's not about proving, it's about pruning. It's about stripping yourself away from those things that would distract you from your God, from your time with God, but also your time with others. And then being able to, when you're spiritually, that's, that blessed are the poor in spirit. That's that whole idea that being poor in spirit means not all these things are taking up my spiritual time. I have a poverty, and that only God can fill, because I've stripped myself away from all those other things.
Yeah, and if you're not living according to your body,
right,
you're
and
focusing on
exactly. Yes. And it's not, we're not body bad, spirit good, but at some point we can't let the body always dictate
and
to
run
us.
to us, because that's what most of us are. We're listening to what our body tells
us. That's a line from the Bible, something about being a slave to your belly.
Yeah,
right?
Well, Romans 8 says, "For if you live according to the flesh, you will die. But if you live by the Spirit, you put to death the deeds of the body, you will live." So not listening to our bodies and everything, because your body will tell you a bunch of things, and we have control of that. We need to be in charge.
Mm-hmm.
Like literally, people get up, have like 10 cups of coffee, and like and like just don't know how to, like, they think they're tired, but they're like, they're, you know what I'm saying? It's like they're like, because you're so in a habit, like, no, you can't put any more caffeine. That's not what's making you tired. It's like we listen to our bodies so much.
when because I'm going into year 4 of this, and I get like excited to do it, because it really does strip away, and it's actually more liberating to me. I wish I could live like this all the time. But what it did do is, when you do this for a longer stretch of time than 40 days, when you do it for a longer stretch of time, you also cultivate more habits. And one of the, I'm not to listen to music unless it's, Christian. I'm not to watch TV unless it's Christian. There's, obviously I already fast, so I don't have to eat in between meals. So that's, but when those 90 days are up, I still kind of found myself not really wanting to listen to much music that wasn't uplifting, that it started to make me more sensitive to modern subliminal messagery in other songs, and made me way more sensitive to movies and TV shows and music that was definitely not sending a message to me or my family that God wanted them to have, or myself to have. And that's because I stripped myself. I had to get out of it in order to see it for what it was, if that makes sense. And I think that's a huge gift. And when you're in it for so long, when you're out of it for so long and come back into it, you realize you don't really want it. It's kind of like when you eat clean for a long time and then finally have like chemical food, like food with all the crappy chemicals that isn't real food. Your body's like, what's this? And you actually get sick. You don't want it. It's gross.
Yeah, like McDonald's or like Taco Bell.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. The one and only time I had Taco Bell after eating clean for a really long time, and it did its work on my body, I don't ever want to have it again. Like, so what I'm saying is, like, you need to detach yourself from these things. The world is always going to try to suck you in and distract you from what's right and what's true and what's good and what's beautiful, in order to formulate and conform your mind to the mind of the world and the mind of the culture. And when you do these kinds of mortifications and you step out of that and you strip yourself away, when you go back in, you see it for what it is, with a lot more of a clear lens into what God intends for us and what God intends for us to be doing with our time, with our talent, with our treasure, with what we are given. Because the distractions, you see them for what they are,
Yeah. And going back to what Matthew said is that we're to deny ourselves, pick up our crosses.
Right.
And crosses are coming one way or the other. They can be forced on us or pushed on us, but those are the ones that we can voluntarily take up. And a lot of that has to do with not only that's obviously the way of Jesus is the way of the cross. The Catechism says the way of perfection passes by the way of the cross, that there's no holiness without renunciation and a spiritual battle, that our faith, it says many times throughout Scripture that our faith needs to be tested. It needs to go through a battle. It needs to be forged in the fire. And what better way to have that battle than voluntarily doing it when it's easy? So when times get tough,
when it's on your terms,
when it's on your terms that you're practicing, because the storms and the battles are going to come.
It's not easy.
You're going to have job loss. You're going to like right now. It's like all over right now. There's so much division with going on with Trump and not Trump. Like whoever's like both sides of the aisle are like, there's nothing like everything is the end of the world. Everything's so amplified. It's like, but there's actual wildfires and we have hurricanes and we have different things going on. So it's like, if we get used to preparing ourselves in the day to day or in different seasons, so when it does cross get pushed on us, a sickness, a cancer, a loved one, a job loss, all those things that you're going to go through, that we've practiced these virtues to be virtuous in the face of, these things that are crosses. We have to voluntarily do that. And the more that we do that is the more, if we do it with love and with joy, the more we are like Jesus. Jesus didn't curse people as he was carrying his cross. He was praying, he was praying. He was silent most of the time.
And a lot of saints talk about when Jesus does, saints that have had visions of Jesus, or saints who had deep devotions and mystical, experiences, that they would talk about how the cross was the way to get the closest to him, and that at the foot of the cross is where you are the most, actually the least the devil can get you, right? And it sounds so counterintuitive that a God who loves us would want to put all these hardships on us, right? But but
sacrifice and the cross is love.
It's more than that. It's also showing like, no, all you need is me. You don't need these things, even these people that are so close to you. You need God.
But I think the other symbol of carrying your cross is willing to sacrifice yourself for other people, you to come last, for you to not buy that motorcycle or not take that that extra or that last piece of food so somebody else can have it. These could be little things in our day that we're practicing.
Not about you.
It's not about you. And the heart of sacrifice is love. And that's what Jesus says, that there's no greater love than this, is to lay down your life for a friend. And when we voluntarily lay down our lives, it's great practice for when it's going to have, not that we're going to be in concentration camps like Maximilian Kolbe had to actually lay down his life, but there's going to be all kinds of
that's why you could offer up, and that's what I'm called to do. And I think Exodus 90 does something, where you have to offer it up for a different person every day. And then if that person comes to your mind in prayer, to reach out to them it's part of that program. But I find it easier when I know I'm doing something for someone, like even offering up a workout, like for somebody, right? Offering, you do that all the time.
At work, I have a board. It says this workout is offered up for
you almost work harder knowing that it's going towards somebody else and it's about something bigger than yourself.
Yeah. And
it makes you think outside of yourself. Like you do, for if someone very close to you passed away, I've done extra, mortifications, or I've offered up certain things for my grandmother's soul, for my grandfather's soul, or for a friend of ours that passed away not too long ago. You just offer up those extra things and you just want to fight harder for that person because you love it. Again, the heart of sacrifice is love, when you have an object that you're doing that for, right?
Yeah. But I love St. Francis de Sales. His advice on this is, first step is to ask God to be with you. So that comes first. God, be with me in this tough thing I'm going to do. That, hey, I'm going to have to die to myself. Hey, be with me. Second is to offer that up for for other people, for a situation, for past sins of yourself. You can even offer up yourself. Like, hey, I offer up myself today, and then accept what comes your way, and to do it well. That's the trick. You can't ask God to be with you, offer up for somebody, and then give it 20%. That's kind of counterintuitive.
I'll say this: if you do slip up, if you go a day, and honestly, we're so much on autopilot, right? We automatically go for that thing. We say we're gonna, I'm gonna give up this for this many days, and then you accidentally have it or eat it or do the then the next day is always okay. It's okay. Keep going instead of say, well, I messed that up. I guess I'm done. Keep going.
Exodus 2.
Exodus 2. Yeah. Well, isn't with 75 hard? You had to start over from one.
That was the hard part. If you messed up, you had to go
Easter's
back.
coming no matter what. So Easter comes on the day Easter comes. So if you mess up on a day, keep going, and the next day get that tenacity.
That's
ask
the good
God
news.
for help. You fall down, you get back up.
But Good Friday comes before Easter Sunday.
Right.
No cross, no crown, as Fulton Sheen or Father Karapi would always say. But that's the big part about it, is that everybody wants to get to heaven. No one wants to die. Everybody wants to be a saint, but no one wants to die to themselves.
So examples. What are some things what does it look like? Not everybody has to do a 90-day thing to prove to anybody or anything. I think, well, there's one more thing I want to say with that it is hard it's such a balancing act. Because on one hand, you're supposed to not really tell anybody you're fasting, right? You're supposed to, we read that every Ash Wednesday,
as we
mark our heads, like, wait, no, we're supposed to be doing this in secret. Pray to your Father in secret. It's saying that it should not be a source of pride. It should not be a source of, let's see what I can do. Let's see if I can overcome this. I'm going to prove to others that what I can do.
But so many times,
however,
God marked people with ashes and sackcloth, so they would know that you were doing it.
You
so
also
read it in context, though.
But it's a both and. That's what I mean. It's such a hard balance, because while we should be doing this, for God and on our own, we also have to let people know what we're doing for two reasons. I mean, it's great to have an accountability source. I'm going to do this thing. I need you to help, hold me accountable. So when you do it in a group, that's fantastic. But the other part of it is, so you're not a weirdo, or they know to leave you alone. Why aren't you coming out with us for drinks? I'm not drinking for 90 days. What? So
you mean it's not to let them know that you're better than them?
Right. So you don't, but that's what
I'm so much better than you.
I'm so much better than you.
Look how great I
drink
am.
for 90 days. That's not it either. Right. And so it's just to make that known, and just to put it out there so that nobody, so that they know, but they still, but it also shows, we want to be good examples of Christian living, and that you could do hard things and be examples of people that do
hard things, but don't do them with sour faces.
Yeah.
That's the worst. Saints with sour faces.
It is such a hard, fine line to walk in that humility, that we're not doing this to brag. We're not doing this to prove ourselves to anybody. It's about stripping ourselves for our relationship with God, to make us better people, so that God can use us for his glory.
But sometimes he uses us in these examples.
But using us for his glory could be using us an example of how, I needed to see somebody go through or do these hard things first before I could see that I could do that.
If they could do it,
if they could do it, I can do it. Yeah. So that's why it's such a fine line. It's such a fine balance, right?
Yeah, but that's just everything
to God's glory. So just sometimes when you find yourself feeling like you're almost bragging, or doing it for the wrong reasons, just be for your glory. Find a way to not make it about what you can and can't do and what others see you doing. That's all. It's hard though. It's easier said than done, because you don't and sometimes I have a problem with false guilt, right? So sometimes I'll be like, "Oh, was that braggy? I don't even know. What did that get to?" Ruminating. But that's okay. That's me. That's something I'm working on. But
so, what are some examples of things? So, if you're not doing a whole 90-day program,
you could do it daily. You could do some daily things, especially if you know someone in your life that's going through a difficult time, or
don't worry about doing 100 things at one time,
or do
one thing a day.
Maybe skipping skipping out on that favorite thing that you always get every day, just to see, not again, is it about seeing if you can do it? But asking God's help, you know what? I'm going to not have that can of Diet Coke today. I could do without it. I don't need it. I'm good. Right.
But it can be a both and. It's for God and for yourself. You're testing yourself to see that, hey, is my body in charge?
Right.
Because if we listen to our bodies,
who's in charge here?
Yeah, right. Because there's so much. If we just wait for feelings or our body to say, well, you're hungry. I'm like, no, I just ate. I know I'm not hungry, but you can listen to those things. Like, hey, I don't want to get up. I'm really tired. Like, no, I'm not going to hit the snooze button today. I set the alarm to get up early so I could do prayer or I could work out or I could do these things. My body's not going to tell me what I'm doing. I'm in charge.
Right.
And that is
through God's help, because I can't do it on my own.
Yeah.
So like that's the number one thing. Help me, Lord, work through me, Lord. I can't do this without you. Give me the grace. So also it could just be of skimming back on something. So long time ago, after a talk at one of our Connect group nights, I put a screen in the screen time part of the Apple, of an iPhone, you can put a screen time where it shuts down certain apps after you've been on them for more than so many minutes. So I put in, I don't remember if it was 15 or 30 minutes that I put for like Instagram, Snapchat, other things that I found myself like doom scrolling on for too long. And it just tells me like, oh, your time's up for today. Like, sweet, thank you. Like it's a way to do things in modification, right? Your mortification can be just modification. It doesn't have to be a full elimination. That's good.
That's good. That? Let's make that
all
quote.
Those Asians. Yeah. Okay. So another thing is just actually sitting in silence, which is so hard for me for such a long time, but I'm so much better at it than I used to be.
Like, what's your longest that you can do now?
Oh, I don't know.
This is a way to push yourself.
I mean, when you sit in a holy hour, you have an hour.
Yeah.
But sitting and actually like
just contemplating.
Sitting in contemplation, I don't know. I think I could go like 15 now, whereas before I could only do 3. So that's another thing that can be a simple
add in
stripping away.
Do your Lectio Divinas where you're reading a scripture passage and you're meditating on it and then turning it into a prayer and then meditating and thinking about it, letting God speak to you for 10 minutes. Some other things, obviously, we hinted on, so cutting, fasting, typical Catholics, we do Fridays, no meat. You can do that.
You can fast from anything. It's the
same you can do it anything. You can do
out.
Traditional stuff. You can do like Wednesday, Friday fasting. You could do fast from coffee this day, or no drinking this weekend. And any of those, anything that you think may be taking control of your life, that's probably the first thing that you should try to attack. Well, like something that's something that's holding you back or stopping you.
A good way, I guess you could do is a good discernment is sit in front of the Blessed Sacrament, or sit in front of, where you pray normally, and just ask God what, like when the rich man came up to God, coming up to Jesus and said, what do I need to gain eternal life? And Jesus, said something about the commandments, and he says, I follow all the commandments. And then he says, well, give up everything and come follow me. And he walked away because he had so many things. Jesus just pinpointed the thing that kept him away from, that attachment to those. So that attachment to those physical and material possessions are what Jesus in that moment pinpointed for that specific guy.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that we're all called to sell all of our stuff, but I think that's
to sit and discern and say, what do I need? I mean, say that question that the rich man asked: what do I need to to attain eternal life? At the same, that's literally asking, what is it in my life right now that is separating me from you, Lord? And he'll give you that. Try to abstain or fast from that. Try to show that does not control you. That is in your way of your relationship with God. It could be a good thing, but that good thing is like becoming too out of control to where you're making it an idol. And that needs to be stripped away for a little bit to show that you don't need that in order to, get closer to Jesus.
Yeah. And I think a good thing too, especially in this climate of so many people hating on so many people, and depending on which, even with the Pope, it's like, you have more liberal, you have more traditional, and everybody's just fighting back and forth. But we had a podcast this week with Father Patrick Briscoe on Purposely Catholic, and he's a Dominican, and he's involved at the Thomistic Institute. And he brought up a good point, because we were asking him about, like, well, what do you say to somebody who's like criticizing, the Pope and this and that? And then he had a relic there of St. Catherine of Siena. And this quote, Catherine of Siena, I thought about this because this quote, she says, without mortification, nothing is of value in the spiritual life. And if you don't know her story, Catherine of Siena, she chastised the Pope. She literally got the Pope. At that time, we had a schism, basically. The papacy was moved to France in Avignon, and she went to the Pope and got him to move it back to Rome. But she had that boldness because she lived her life for 7 years that all she ate was the Eucharist for 7 days. She loved the Pope. She prayed for the Pope all day long. She loved him that much. She wanted him to do it right. Not because I think I know better. It's like, so if you're quick to criticize other people, your spouse, your coworkers, how much are you sacrificing for that person? How much are you doing for that person? How much do you actually love them that you want them to change? Or is it just your selfishness of what you would want and how you think,
think it should be done?
Because there's a lot of things that I don't agree with what Pope Francis says, but am I praying for him enough? Am I saying a rosary for him? Am I sacrificing for him? If I truly want those things to change, that's how to do. And St. Catherine of Siena gave us that example. What did she do? She lived on the Eucharist alone for 7 years.
And she offered it up for those conversion, for the
exactly.
conversion.
And then it,
God to use her the right way.
Obviously she's a saint. But my point is that that's what these mortifications.
But we're all called to be saints, but we're all called to emulate that.
But that's what she said. Without mortification, there's nothing value in the spiritual life, because then it's just you projecting what you want as a prayer to God. When we mortify ourselves and we strip ourselves out, when we empty out ourselves, we leave space for God to fill us up. The same way that God, we know the term kenosis, that God emptied himself out from heaven with the Father to take on our flesh. That's the same way that we are to receive God into our lives, that we need to be empty so that his kenosis can come into us and fill us with what he wants us to do, instead of us taking our fallen brokenness and our sinfulness and then projecting that onto God as his will. So it's like, it helps us also to change our perspective on how we see things when we empty ourselves out, whether that's for others or of food or of, whatever that thing is that I'm addicted to, or whatever that thing is that I spend most of my time doing. It's like we're stripping those things away and emptying ourselves so that I can be filled with him, that, I can be a slave for Jesus. That's what we're called to do. But it's like, that's what I know I'm tempted to criticize so much, especially if you spend too much time on X and Twitter. It's like, it's real easy to get on. I just want to criticize everybody. It's like, well, your best thing to do is do mortification.
The best mother, one of the best, she's just so great and everything. There's so many things she said that are golden, but Mother Teresa said, if you are judging someone, you have no room in your heart to love them. That I had to read that like 5 times. I'm like, whew, yeah.
Well, I mean,
when you judge someone, you have no room,
and you have
no time,
and you have no time for it.
Oh, maybe it was time. You have no time. When you judge someone, you have no time. I thought it was room, but whatever. I mean, it's probably both. Yeah. And when you judge someone, you have no, let's say, time and room to love them. Like you don't have a space. You're not providing a space in order to have compassion and love for them, and that is hard because.
Well, I'll give you this example. So on both of our accounts, I've shared all kinds of I share Catholic stuff, quotes. So
Catholic couple, purposely Catholic. I mean,
yeah. So I shared JD Vance was just at the March for Life. So I shared a quote about JD Vance, and the vitriol that came out about the quote, which is Catholic. It's like, even if all those things that you're saying are true, which I don't think they are, that's your first inclination, is to jump on a post and say he's the devil, he's a traitor, he's this, regardless, because he's on a different political party than what you think. It's instead of praying for this guy, like he's doing? Like, and then a Catholic couple, I shared Marco Rubio, and he's a revert back to the Catholic faith. He's a warmonger. He's this, and I'm like, he's been literally in for 2 days, like warmonger. Like, no, they're already signing a peace deal, and right now they're working on peace in Ukraine. It's like, let's pray for these.
Politics should not be your religion either.
And that's exactly what's going on.
You stripped yourself. You used to be obsessed with politics, and it took you
getting rid
stripping
of it.
yourself away from it for a while.
So now
but exactly. So you have to step away. You have to strip back for a little bit. And then when you go back in, you really do come in with a different lens. So like I said about me not watching TV or listening to music, like all the secularism, when you separate yourself from that secularism just for a little bit, then you go back into it, you see it more for what it truly is, right? Yeah. And you're out of the mix. And that really needs to happen with politics.
But for me, I stepped out and I really stopped listening to any political talk radio, stopped doing all that. But now I'm back into it again. But now I see it differently because we do a lot of that on Purposely Catholic. We look at a lot of current events. We talk about it as through the lens of our Catholic faith. In this week's episode, there's a lot to talk about. Joe Biden just became a Freemason yesterday. Like what's the deal with that? What's this? Well, it's a brand new news story. Like, hey, they just released 23 pro-lifers that Trump had executive order, and that we met the son of Joan Bell. She was a 73-year-old grandmother who was locked up for 3 years for praying in an abortion clinic. The son was at that event this summer at the shrine, and it's like, and then her first action was she wanted to go to the March for Life. It's like, so there are things that we can really see and bring our Catholic lens to these issues. But if you're getting obsessed about it because of this party or that, like, yeah, no one's perfect and things like that. But when we take a step back and then we go back, because we're called to fast and feast. So when we go back into the world, we get a different appreciation for the things of that that matter.
Right.
And we can do that, but we have to take a step back and to do it prayerfully. So when we step back in to engage, we're doing it for the right reasons in the right way.
And you're doing it with less distraction and less beer goggles on.
Well, you're not trying to dunk on people. Like that's
right.
That's like, no, I want to win. I'm trying to get a lot better than in our marriage. Would you rather be right or rather be smart? And unfortunately, too many times I want to be right. So I'm learning.
Not saying a thing. This isn't a marriage episode, Bob. This is a mortification and
so you are saying I'm always right? Great, thank you.
So saints who did things.
Well, I mean,
all right.
Well, probably the greatest that started it would be the great desert fathers.
Oh,
so Saint Anthony of the Desert.
I would say the greatest that did it was Jesus himself.
Well, he's not a saint. He's God.
Or Saint John the Baptist. He was the OG desert wanderer, right? Yeah. Stripping himself of all the worldly,
Saint Elijah,
all the worldly pleasures. But I'm saying New Testament, right? And that feeding on, and what did they do in the Old Testament? And what, this whole idea of wearing sackcloth and putting ashes and all those things. That sackcloth is super itchy and uncomfortable. It's denying
or
yourself.
A hair shirt. They used to do hair shirts.
Hair shirts. Could you imagine?
Yeah, I could. It would be horrible. But
so that whole idea of, I'm not a person that whips myself or anything like that, right? Like they're like shame, that's where it's going a little too far with that, like causing pain, like those kind of mortifications. But a denial of yourself, a denial of those things that can distract you from the truth, or just say the true, the good, and the beautiful, because that is exactly what our world wants to do. That's what the devil wants us to be distracted.
Yeah, but like you made a good point that all those people, what did they do? They went out into the desert. They had to leave.
And so that's what
they had to take time. And sometimes it's a physical leaving, sometimes it's a time, sometimes it's an isolation, sometimes it's solitude. But that's
what's your desert? Find your desert. That's why it's so important to pray and discern your desert.
Have a set time. I think that helps, is that, hey, I'm going to do it for a week, a weekend. I'm going to do it for 40 days for Lent. I'm going to do it for 90 days, because then you're setting a goal. That's a time. So then, okay, I'm on day 10, then you help your progress. And when we move towards goals, that helps our, the way that we propels us, that gives us happy. Well, okay, I got through the first week, and then there's a reflection, and there's plenty of these programs that you can go through, but that's part of it though, is that we have to go out into the desert, but the temptation is, like in Exodus, is that as soon as they got out into the desert, what did they start doing? They start complaining and crying and want to go back into their slavery because they missed, look at all that, the meat and the leeks and the onions that we had. It's like, here we are, God fed us with manna,
right?
And we're already tired of quail and manna, that they want to go back to be slaves so they can
they'd rather be enslaved so they could have the comforts,
some comforts of food.
And
so that's the temptation that we have to watch out from, is that wanting to go back to, whether if that's you gave up caffeine or you gave up the alcohol or whatever that is, that's what's calling you back. It's like, no, that's where the growth comes in. And say, I don't need that. I can be a little uncomfortable, and sometimes it takes a few days, but once you get through that discomfort, then it's like, now you're free. All that time you would have spent drinking or social media, now you're free to do other things, spend time, make calls, pray, whatever that is.
Kind of unpacked all that.
Yeah. So, but my point, I was trying to get there in a roundabout way, was that St. Anthony of the Desert was the first one who really showed us after the gospel, like, this is a way to live. Like, he went out there, but he was inspired by that story of the rich man, sell everything. And he's like, well, I'm going to do it. But for us,
like St. Francis of Assisi is very
it's
similar.
like, but for us, God is calling us to do that for Lent. They're calling us to do this sometimes for like Advent, to do these seasons. But, most of us are married, have kids, living a life, have jobs. We can't just sell everything and go out into the desert or become a missionary, but we can sell our weekend plans for God. We can sell our, 3-4 weeks for Lent. We can
sell getting that coffee every day and giving it, to another, good cause. But so some inspirations that we talked about. So Saint Therese of Lisieux was the little flower. She did the little mortifications daily by offering up little small sacrifices with love. And I mean, that was, it does. I'm a big believer in sweating the small things. If you sweat the small stuff, then you're not going to do the big things. Right. So in those little acts of little small sacrifices that you can do to offer up for others or to offer up for a cause. St. John Paul II, he did a lot of different, look up some of the practices that he did. It's very interesting, some of his. He also went to confession daily. I don't know what the Pope would have to say daily, but that's just, again, but he would like sleep on the floor and do little small sacrifices like that. Obviously, we talked about St. Francis of Assisi. He was pretty wealthy. He gave all that up and was radical self-denial. Again, when you look at those radicals, it kind of makes your little sacrifices seem like they should be a little bit easier, right? Yeah. So it's that thing to be that radical, like how you said, it's difficult to do, especially when you're a busy parent, where you're juggling kids, work, sports, everything else, that you could offer up your frustration. Yeah. And, so.
Well, to round it back, bring it back to the beginning, we talked about, what are you trying to prove? And it's not that we're trying to prove anything, but like what Jesus tells us is that you will know a tree by its fruit. Like, what are the fruits in your life that you don't?
Where do you want fruit?
Where do you want fruit?
What's not being, what's,
but
are you losing your patience more
exactly.
easily?
Are you doing this? If you're going to do all this stuff and you're going to be grouchy, don't do it, because that's not going to bring fruit. That's going to bring rot. That's going to bring like, oh, you're one of those, sour-faced Christians. Like, no, like, if you're going to do it with joy, like, do it with love, do it with, gratitude, but do it. I mean, that's the main thing, is that not because you got to prove it to anybody or to God, but God is calling us to go deeper. And this is a way to go deeper, is not to be so burdened by other things, that we can go deeper and spend.
So you don't necessarily have to do a program. You could start small with little actions. But if you're interested in programs, there's 3 that we know of, that Exodus 90, I do Magnify 90, and then Nineveh 90 is another group. But there's also in Lent, I believe it's called Fiat 40, which has very similar mortifications to Magnify 90, but it's within the context of Lent. And it really is, honestly, I was asked by a friend today. She's like, okay, so this is year 4. What group do you do this with? I'm like, I don't. I do it kind of by myself. And it would be nice to have a group to do it with. So it is, if you could find a group of friends that want to do this together, you can hold each other accountable, even if it's something small, like we're going to do this thing for 2 weeks. So
Exodus 90 that comes with it. Like, that's part of the program, is that you
Exodus
get groups. So that's like a built-in part of it.
Yeah.
Not necessarily your friends, but a lot of people do it with friends, but there's an online community that goes with it. And I'm sure you can find those things too.
Yeah, but it was supposed to be Like I'm supposed to be off of all kinds of social media and things like that. So I can see like,
yeah, but if you're doing this,
if you're doing that, like that's
different.
just your
I'm
only
not going
thing.
as doom scroll. I'm going.
So
to
what I'm saying is doing something with others helps to stay accountable to it, but you don't have to. So yeah.
Well, hopefully.
So it's not about proving anything.
It's not about proving anything.
That's it.
Unless you're trying to prove something to somebody.
That's not what. That's literally what we just said.
No, that was the hard balance that we were saying that it's very hard.
No, what it's saying it's no.
No what?
Like you want to be a good Christian example, but you don't have to prove anything to anybody because it's not about proving. It's about stripping yourself, away from the things that distract you from God and allowing.
Because we are not saved by works. We're saved for works.
Right.
The works and the things that we're doing are not
It's not about what you do. It's a participation.
I was just messing with you.
Okay. I'm throwing away off. I was
just messing with you.
All right. You want to end in prayer?
Yeah. Let's, if you got something from this episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We would appreciate it. We're doing this so more people would hear it. So if you could share it, like it, subscribe, that does help us. So we do appreciate it. Let's end with a prayer. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Lord Jesus, I ask you to inspire those who are watching and listening to want to pick up their cross voluntarily, to deny themselves and to grow closer to you. Help us all to strip all the things that need to go away, the things that are holding us back to full communion with you and with each other. I ask you to send forth your Holy Spirit and kindle all of our minds to know and discern what those things are. Help us to be honest about it. Help us to be brave enough to get rid of it. And we ask for your grace to fulfill it. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. God bless you and have a beautiful day.